There's a pattern buried in history that almost nobody talks about. It isn't about armies or empires or weapons. It's about trust. Specifically, it's about the moment someone realizes, often far too late, that the person standing closest to them was never truly on their side. Look closely enough at the collapse of the world's greatest powers, and the same signature keeps showing up. Not a foreign enemy, not an outside invasion, a trusted friend, a loyal officer, a sworn ally, choosing the exact moment of maximum vulnerability to strike. Start in Rome, in the year 44 BC, on a day the Romans would come to call the Ides of March. Julius Caesar had just reached the absolute peak of his power. He'd been named dictator for life. He'd reformed the calendar, redistributed land, expanded citizenship, and pulled a crumbling republic back from the edge of collapse. He believed he'd made enough allies to be untouchable. He was wrong in the worst possible way. As he took his seat in the Senate that morning, a group of senators closed in around him under the pretense of a petition. What followed became one of the most infamous incidents in human history. More than 20 men, several of whom Caesar had personally pardoned, promoted, or trusted like family, turned on him within seconds. Among them was Marcus Brutus, a man Caesar had treated almost like a son. Ancient sources disagree on whether Caesar actually spoke his famous last words, but they agree on this. The moment he saw Brutus among his attackers, he stopped resisting entirely. The men responsible believed they were saving the Republic. Instead, they triggered over a decade of civil war and cleared the path for the very one-man rule they claimed to be preventing. Caesar's own adopted heir eventually became Rome's first emperor. Every single person involved in that morning met a violent end within years. None of them got the outcome they wanted. Fast forward almost 1,500 years to the final days of Constantinople in 1453. The city had survived for over 1,000 years, outlasting siege after siege, empire after empire. Now it faced an Ottoman army of 80,000 men, with a defending garrison of barely 7,000. Among the defenders was a mercenary commander named Giovanni Giustiniani, holding the single most vulnerable stretch of the city's walls against relentless bombardment for nearly 2 months. He was, by every account, exceptional at his job. Then, during the final assault, he was wounded. The sources disagree on exactly how, and made a decision that would end an empire. He asked for a gate to be opened so he could withdraw for treatment. The emperor himself begged him to stay at his post. He refused. The moment his own troops saw their commander retreating, they assumed the battle was already lost and followed him through the gate. The Ottomans poured through the opening left behind. Within hours, a city that had never fallen in 1,000 years fell. The emperor charged into the incoming soldiers and was never seen again. Whether that retreat was a human being making an understandable choice under impossible pressure or something closer to abandonment is still debated by historians today. But the men left holding the walls behind him almost certainly had an opinion. Cross the ocean now to 1532, where a Spanish force of barely more than 150 men faced an empire of 10 million people and an army of 80,000 warriors. By any rational calculation, the Spanish should have been wiped out within days. Instead, their commander invited the Inca ruler to a peaceful diplomatic meeting, promised him safety, and insisted he came only to talk. The Inca ruler arrived with thousands of unarmed attendants, dressed for a ceremony, not a battle. Because nobody brings weapons to a peace talk, the Spanish had hidden cannons and cavalry inside the surrounding buildings. What followed inside that town square, in a matter of hours, became one of the deadliest ambushes in recorded history. The Inca ruler was captured, and in an attempt to buy his freedom, he offered a ransom almost impossible to imagine, enough gold and silver to fill entire rooms, worth tens of millions of dollars today. His people fulfilled that promise completely, stripping temples and palaces across the empire to pay it. He held up his end of the bargain. It didn't matter. He was eliminated anyway, on invented charges of treason against a crown he had never even heard of before that year. In a strange twist of historical irony, the man who orchestrated it all was later removed by his own former allies less than a decade afterward, reportedly making one final gesture of faith as he lay dying. Not every betrayal in history involves a single broken promise from one person. Sometimes the betrayal is a system itself. In the year 73 AD, on top of a desert fortress called Masada, nearly 1,000 Jewish rebels held out against the Roman army for months. They were the last resistance following a devastating war that had already seen their holiest sites destroyed. Throughout the siege, Roman commanders repeatedly offered the same message: surrender, and your lives will be spared. But the defenders atop Masada had already seen what Roman mercy looked like in practice, and it looked nothing like the words suggested. When the final assault became inevitable, the defenders made an unimaginable collective choice rather than accept what awaited them below. It's a story historians still argue over today, based on a single, contested ancient source. But whatever the exact truth, the underlying betrayal wasn't a lie spoken by one man. It was a promise offered by a system that had already shown its true face. And then there's a story from the 20th century that proves this pattern never really disappeared. In 1934, a man named Ernst Röhm was arguably one of the most powerful and loyal figures behind Adolf Hitler's rise. He had built an entire paramilitary organization from nothing into a force of millions, the very machine that helped put Hitler in power in the first place. The two men were, by multiple accounts, genuinely close, but Röhm's ambitions had started to threaten the interests of the traditional military establishment, and Hitler was forced to choose between them. He chose the army. In the early hours of a single night, forces loyal to Hitler moved in and arrested Röhm along with dozens of others. Röhm reportedly refused to accept an offered path to end things on his own terms, insisting that if his old friend truly wanted him gone, his friend would have to do it himself. He was removed from power permanently within his cell days later. The man who built the very machine that created a dictator never saw the betrayal coming, because he never imagined the machine would eventually turn on its own creator. 5 different centuries, 5 completely different cultures, empires, and circumstances. Yet the same exact mechanism appears every single time. It's never the outside enemy who does the real damage. It's the senator who was pardoned, the commander who was trusted with the most dangerous wall, the ally who was promised safety, the system that offered mercy, the friend who was addressed on a first-name basis. Every one of these downfalls came from the inside, from the closest possible distance, at the exact moment the guard was lowest. Which raises an uncomfortable question worth sitting with. Strip away the armor, the gold, the armies, and the empires. What's actually left protecting any position of power? Not walls, not soldiers, just the belief that the person standing next to you is who they say they are. History keeps proving how fragile that belief really is. If patterns like this fascinate you as much as they fascinate us, this channel exists to dig up exactly this kind of erased history. Subscribe if you want more of it.